What is he talking about?
Greeks. Greek stuff.
He says, in school, I'm cool throughout the week. When the weekend comes, I'm down with the Greeks.
I can't believe this.
Are y'all beginning to see? For those of you all saw part 2,
You're done with the Greeks.
he just said it.
Frat brothers going across the seven.
Frat brothers known across the 7 seas, fly ladies of the 80s, sororities, the Zetas, Deltas, AKAs, women that keep me in a daze, the A Phi A, Sigma boys on the move, when the Kappas and the Qs, and of course the groove. And this is exactly what he's talking about. This is conscious rap. Or at least a projection of it. Now, there are conscious rappers out there, but this is just a projection of it. And if we buy into that and we perceive it as such, then so be it. But is it reality? Was Public Enemy promoting issues of black conscience, or were they merely used to tap into a consumer market, i.e. the so-called black conscious community? Mega Blast is dealing with crack cocaine. Time is getting crazy. People clocking out. They're robbing all the cribs on Death Wish route, breaking into cars, trying to steal their system. 20 pounds on the bar. Bet you can't lift them. You throw 2 punches. Now you got no wind. Hitting mega pipes, getting super stupid thin. Smoking all the squares and crying all the tears because you're working for your boy. Come short and full of swears. You couldn't make the money because you smoked up all the product. Walking around town, skepolepsy, ill-erotic. Can't be trusted because you're living in the past. You shouldn't have kept your ass away from that blast. Mega blast. Okay? Now, he's basically saying you should have kept you stayed away from smoking crack. And that's a good message, is it not? However, the individual who spoke these lyrics, Flavor Flav, by the 1990s, Flavor Flav had become a drug addict. In 1991, he pled guilty to assaulting his then-girlfriend, Karen Ross, and has served 30 days in jail, lost custody of his children, and sank deeper into addiction. Which ties us to the first concept that I presented. From Malcolm to Flavor Flav. The gradual acceptance of ethical and intellectual mediocrity amongst black leadership. And there are people who perceive him as the leader. And if you don't think this is true, when he used to wear these clocks, there was people walking around wearing the same clock. Look at this. And then, would you ever perceive Malcolm to get on dressed up like this with this? And the last track is Terminator X. However, this last track is audio. There's no vocal part. That chord is connected up there, bro. Okay, so this Public Enemy Yo Bummer Show, 1987. There were only 2 tracks that actually had positive lyrical content. Only 2. Right Starter and Mega Blast. 98% of the lyrical content within the album Yo Bummer Show does not speak to the uplift of black people. I went line by line, lyric by lyric, track by track. And 98% of the lyrical content within the album Yo Bum Rush the Show does not speak to the uplift of black people. Therefore, Public Enemy's first album cannot be deemed as revolutionary, uplifting, or conscious. Now, if you want to, go do the research yourself. Get the albums off the internet. You can get them off the internet. And go line by line, album by album, and mark down the percentage of the positive lyric versus the percentage of the negative lyrics. And you know what? I'm being generous. Because within the positive lyrics, I included lyrics that were neutral. I understand that Public Enemy experienced minimal commercial success with their first album. In fact, the market was already saturated with music centered around partying, braggadocio, symposia, and disrespect for women, etc. So the market was already saturated. So what does that mean? We're going to have to make some changes, right? Therefore, as a marketing strategy employed to develop commercial success, it would be necessary for Public Enemy to be perceived as a militant or conscious hip-hop group, militarization being a subliminal buzzword for revolution. So let's militarize them even more, their lyrical content. A revolution that the black consciousness community had been anticipating for decades. Public Enemy discography from 1987 to 1994. 1987, Yo Bum Rush the Show had less than 2% conscious content. In 1987, only 2%. 1988, It Takes a Million to Hold Us Back only had 12% positive lyrical content. 1990, Fear of a Black Planet, 65% lyrical content. You all seeing a change here? That's drastic. In two years, you're going to go from 2% to 65%? How is that the case? And you experience limited commercial success with the 2%, but then in 1988, you start to get a little bit more, and then by 1990, you start to get the real commercial success. Why? Because you've tapped into that black conscious community, that demographic. And not only are they buying up, but other people are buying up because the entertainment industry began to promote this particular genre. And there was a particular reason why I wish I could say. I might tell you afterwards, okay? So 1987, 2%, 1988, 12%, 1990, 65%. As a matter of fact, in 1990, there was a whole lot of artists that started to try to quote unquote go conscious. Ones that were calling women bitches and hoes in 1987 and 1988. But in 1990, there was a lot that began to switch, and there's a reason why. 1990, 65%. 1991, Apocalypse 91, only 52% conscious rap, but it's still, or conscious lyrical content, but it's still centered around that whole 65. By 1992, The Greatest Misses, which was a compilation album, they're down to 44%, but that's still a drastic change from 1988 to 1987. 1994, Muse, Sick in Our Mess Edge, 58%, still centered around that 65%, 52%. Now, as a father, I would only allow my sons to listen to less than 1% of Public Enemy's 1987 to 1994 discography. As a father, I would only allow them to listen to less than 1%. The rest of it, there's absolutely no way that I would allow my sons to listen to this. And there's a reason why. Because less than 2% of Public Enemy's music speaks to manhood, fatherhood, or the importance of the family institution. You think I'm going to have my sons listening to that? Absolutely not. Question: how was it that Public Enemy was perceived, because we're dealing with perception, not reality, because we already provided evidence and proof in terms of the percentiles. How was it that Public Enemy was perceived as a hip-hop group committed to black liberation despite the fact that their early recordings had very little conscious content therein? Let me just make one quick point here too. 2%, 12%, 65, 52, 44, and 58. This is quote-unquote positive lyrical content. The idea is that if we're talking about manhood, if we're talking about leadership, black leadership, all of this should be 100%. That's right, but it should be. In terms of what the standards that we set for manhood, fatherhood, and black leadership, all of this should be 100%. Now, just because we see improvement doesn't necessarily make them conscious. It depends on the standards by which you set. And the standards that I set, no, this is not conscious. You better be 100 or you out of here, buddy. So, how was it that Public Enemy was perceived as a hip-hop group committed to black liberation despite the fact that their early recordings had very little conscious content therein? Well, this is how. Subliminal associations. Much of my early work deals with this in film form, documentary form. References to Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Elijah Muhammad, Huey Newton, Louis Farrakhan, and Jesse Jackson, etc. Some of these are actually Boulay members. To how conscious were they really? But the point I'm getting is that if you can make references to these individuals, these are subliminal associations. So even if you're calling women bitches, you throw in some of this stuff and you're going to tap into the black conscious community. You see the game? Samples of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Farrakhan speeches. They would sample it and literally put it inside their lyrics. And then the next track, they're calling women bitches and hoes. Lyrical references to red, black, and green, TPTV. Anyone know what that stands for? The powers that be. Does anyone know what that stands for? Well, let's see. NWO, CIA, FBI, Illuminati, overthrowing governments, guns, bombs, wiretappings, courts, war, judges, terrorism, rebels, hostages, devils, aka white devils, revolution, black power, etc. So these are the types of terminology and lyrical content they start to infuse into their lyrics. This is subliminal association. Conscious buzzwords such as brothers and sisters. Hey, brothers and sisters. Oh yeah, but you were just calling a sister a sophisticated bitch. Inconsistency. Music samples of James Brown. And y'all know how James Brown was supposed to represent like revolution and so forth. Say it. What was that song? Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud.
Say it loud.
And he was an illegitimate father to a whole lot of babies, a drug addict, and an alcoholic.
Nixon supporter.
That's right.
Don't stop.
Nixon supporter. Right.
The infusion of heavy metal as a form of adolescent rebellion. Yeah, see, this is for a particular demographic. This is tap into the white audience. Because for white folk, the heavy metal, for young adolescents, it was a form of rebellion. So you put that in your music, and automatically you're legitimized as a rebellious force. Therefore, you're, quote unquote, about a change, okay, or bucking the system, or fighting the power. Oh my goodness, let me get into that in a moment. Sound effects including sirens, bombs, and explosions. They had a lot of this. You go back and listen to their albums, a lot of sirens, bombs, and explosions in the background, in the periphery, as being subliminal manipulation. They call it neurolinguistic programming. Let's get into this real quick. Sound effects including sirens, bombs, and explosions. Sirens are extensively used in Public Enemy's music productions. The use of sirens is a form of subliminal manipulation wherein the listener is unwittingly placed in a state of physical tension, heightened awareness, and or psychological imbalance. Y'all go and listen to some sirens for a while. Some of y'all, when you're driving your car, you ain't doing nothing wrong, you hear some sirens, and you are placed in a state of physical tension, heightened awareness, and or psychological imbalance. So they have this in the music. Now, why do they do this? While in these manipulated states, the subconscious mind is susceptible to subliminal suggestion, through which mind control programming can be embedded into the listener's subconscious mind. The use of sirens is nothing more than a form of hip-hop mind control. Go back and listen to their music. And listen to the sirens, the bombs, and the explosions. Now, it gets even deeper than that. The use of bombs and explosions is another mind control technique, and that bombs and explosions are a symbolic representation of social, political protest, war, or revolution. Are you beginning to see? Therefore, these sound effects become symbolic representations of change for black people.
It is a type of, when you really think about it, it is a type of psychological deprivation that they use for mind control.
That's right. That's right. Now, another aspect of mind control. Y'all gonna have to follow me on this one, because this one, me and my wife, we talked about this a lot. Mind control via neuro-linguistic programming. Check this out. Simply stated, neuro-linguistic programming is a subliminal technique that employs trigger words, music, colors, symbols, or phrases to subliminally implant thoughts, ideas, and or commands into an individual or group's subconscious mind. Now, the implanted thoughts, ideas, and or commands can impact the thoughts, ideas, and or behavior patterns of the individual or group to which the neuro-linguistic programming was directed. An excellent example of this can be heard in Public Enemy's song, Fight the Power. Y'all got to follow me on this. Because when we talk about the manipulation of human consciousness, this right here, check this out.